Good Friday morning, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Demonstrations continue in Mexico demanding more information on the case of 43 missing students. Teachers from the states of Guerrero and Michoacan have organized 3 caravans that will travel the country to demand the safe return of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students. The caravans will travel through 8 different states. They plan to stop in towns along the way to bring even more awareness to the case and eventually build a national movement. The 3 brigades are named after 3 of the students who were killed on September 26th. The caravans plan to come together in Mexico City on November 20th. In Michoacan, hundreds of teachers protested in solidarity with the Ayotzinapa students and blocked dozens of government buildings throughout the state. Last night, a federal judge formally charged the former mayor of Iguala, Jose Luis Abarca, of 6 counts of manslaughter and probable homicide in the case. For more, here's our correspondent in Mexico, Clayton Kahn.
Amid the ongoing crisis in Mexico over the Ayotzinapa case and the widespread indignation by society towards the authorities for their apparent lack of credible information on the search for the 43 disappeared students, Mexico's Congress approved yesterday the 2015 annual budget that will see a 65.3% cut in resources for a special unit designated to search for the disappeared. In this fiscal year, the unit counted on nearly $3 million or 40 million pesos, but in the budget approved yesterday, the unit will only have roughly $1 million or 14 million pesos. After years of protest and actions by families of Mexico's 26,000 disappeared, Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto signed a decree to form the unit in June of 2013. Yet critics say ever since the formation, it has had very few resources and has been very ineffective. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for Telesur here in the Mexican capital.
And thanks to Clayton. Moving on now, for decades, families in Guatemala negatively affected by the construction of a dam have demanded compensation. For the first time, the government has publicly announced new measures to do just that. But for whether it's enough, here's our correspondent Rolando Garcia.
They gathered to witness the presentation of public policies to compensate for violations provoked by the construction of the Chixoy Dam, a right they've been claiming for more than 30 years.
It's a compensation and repair of the human rights violation, the abuse and the injustice they have suffered for many years.
The Mayanachi people refused to lose their territory after the construction of the dam was imposed. The state started to make extrajudicial executions and evictions under the watch of their financial backers. So remember the survivors.
The World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank for financing such construction. We say it before, they are accomplices of all the human rights violations we have suffered, and this is something we cannot forget.
These violations took place between 1980 and 1982. In this cemetery are buried the bodies of some of the slaughtered. Meanwhile, 11,383 survivors live in misery. The majority of them were sent to live in colonies and were forgotten. Now they live in inhuman conditions in several regions of the country.
We don't have any land. We don't have a place to collect logs. We have no acotes, no cal, everything we have to buy. And now we only have very little to plant the corn.
The compensation policies are made up of 5 measures with a budget of over $150 million. This might compensate part of the material assets, but won't bring the dead back to life.
And moving on, the government of Argentina expressed its rejection to United Kingdom's naval military exercises being held off the coast of the Malvina Islands. The Foreign Ministry released a statement calling the war games a new provocation by the UK government against Argentina. It especially criticized the 136 projectiles that the frigate HMS Iron Duke fired. The government also condemned Great Britain for failing to abide by UN resolutions and international pleas for it to sit at a bargaining table to discuss returning sovereignty of the islands back to Argentina. Three Central American leaders are scheduled to meet today in the U.S. capital of Washington with Vice President Joe Biden to present him with their plan to dissuade migration to the United States. The issue has remained a major concern since the revelation that tens of thousands of children have been fleeing the Central American region trying to enter the U.S. without papers. The presidents of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala presented the new initiative at a press conference on Thursday, calling it the Prosperity Partnership of the North Triangle. The initiative seeks to create more opportunities for social and economic growth in the communities of origin where most of the migrants have come. It also aims to promote their cultural roots and attempts to keep children and adolescents at home. U.S. President Barack Obama addressed the issue of immigration from Myanmar on Thursday, where he defended plans to use his executive authority to pass immigration reform. The president's remarks come after the media reported on Wednesday his 10-point plan on immigration reform, which included stopping the deportation of millions of immigrants. In the meantime, Republicans continue to criticize the president's actions, accusing him of bypassing Congress.
You know, the president is threatening to take unilateral action on immigration, even though in the past he's made clear he didn't believe he had the constitutional responsibility or authority to do that. And I'll just say this. We're going to fight the president tooth and nail if he continues down this path. This is the wrong way to govern. This is exactly what the American people said on Election Day they didn't want. And so all the options are on the table. We're having discussions with our members, and there are no decisions been made as to how we will fight this if he...
And moving on, in Australia today, the country is preparing for the G20 summit scheduled to begin tomorrow. World leaders began arriving earlier this week for the international summit. Main priorities are expected to include boosting economic growth, fireproofing the global banking system, and closing tax loopholes. A showdown between Russia and Western leaders is also expected after tensions have once again increased in eastern Ukraine, with NATO forces accusing Russia of sending tanks to the area. Russia denies the allegations. And in Palestine this week, Hamas, the governing body of Gaza, has warned that Israel's actions could spark what it calls a new explosion in the region. The remarks come after a recent wave of conflict in Jerusalem and attacks against Muslim holy sites. Hamas spokesperson Abu Obaida spoke to a crowd of cheering supporters on Thursday, his first public appearance since the end of the latest war in Gaza.
The continued blockade and the undermining of the reconstruction could be the spark of the new explosion, and the occupation will feel the full wrath of the explosion, because the occupation is responsible for the delay and the undermining of the long-term truce.
And that's where we end it today. Excuse me. For Tell Us Her English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you in a few hours.